Hello everybody and welcome back to the transition course. We're going to now start and talk about workforce safety. Our goals here are compare BSI versus PPE. We're going to talk about stress management and wellness. BSI versus PPE. First, the practice of universal precaution was introduced in 1985 through 1988. In 1987, the practice of universal precaution was adjusted by a set of rules known as the body substance isolation, which we get BSI. So that was back in 1987. In 1996, both practices were replaced by the latest approach known as standard precautions in healthcare now. Nowadays, an isolated practice of body substance isolation was just there for historical significance. PPE is the standard. BSI is what started it all back in the 1987. Body substance isolation went further than the universal precautions in isolating workers from the pathogens, including substances now currently known as HIV, because back then it was a virus that nobody had the name of. There's a really good couple of movies out there about where HIV came from and the history of HIV, and it tells you nobody knew how to treat it or prevent it. They didn't know what it even came from. They thought maybe you sneezed in the room, you could catch it. Back in 1987, nobody even wore rubber gloves much. It was a badge of honor to have blood on you. So they had to develop something to stop healthcare workers from catching these deadly diseases. These pathogens fell into two broad categories: bloodborne, which is carried by body fluids, and airborne. The practice of BSI was common in pre-hospital care and emergency services, but due to often unknown natures of the patients, his and her diseases or medical condition, it was part of the national standard curriculum of pre-hospital providers and firefighters. So, BSI was what it started all in 1987, was known as body substance isolation. That changed and morphed a little bit, but you got to remember, body substance isolation is a complete isolation from the actual pathogen itself. Later did we develop and understand that what HIV was, hepatitis, what it came from, what the risk factors, and how we can catch it. Now, when we get into stress management, this is an integral part of your job. Knowing when and where, when you just reach that point of being overstressed. There are 15 of the most common daily stressors we experience as paramedics are the daily hassle of non-work, daily hassle of work days. So basically you come into work, you got to check a truck out, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to make sure things clean, you've got to take care of this, and and throughout the day when you're running calls and you pause these daily work tasks, you've got to go, okay, I've got to go back and do it. Another thing that's very hard, which is some of the main stressors, is unable to finish your work because you had been sleep disturbed. So, you're sitting there and you're running calls and you're tired and you're just constantly running call after call after call after call, and then you're up all night and then you're trying to do your job correctly. It's stressful because you're so tired. How many of us have gone to Baptist in the middle of the night and just worried about, did we hit anything when we got back to the base? That's something. Thoughts about the future and thoughts about, how it's going to affect you and what it's going to affect. Every time you think of the future and what's coming next, it's kind of hard to think about it because you're just trying to focus on getting through today. It's stressful. Unable to complete all your plans for today. Thought about unfinished work when you're sitting and you're stressing continuously over what you didn't get done. Now, of course, mind you, there are some people like me that would just not stress that much about things don't get done. But there are many others who stress and stress and stress over what they're doing because they don't get done. They're very analytical. They got to get A through Z done. If they don't get that done in the day, then it just ruins their day. It's very stressful. How many of us have to deal with hurried with meeting a deadline, interrupted during tasks and activities? I'm going to say it like this. You're at work, and suddenly your wife or husband or your loved one calls you and says, hey, you forgot to pay the power bill. Can you go pay it real quick? Even get on the phone to pay it, and then suddenly your pager goes off, then you keep running. And then throughout the day, you just don't have time to do it. And, it's very stressful to worry about these things. Money problems interrupted while you're trying to think and relax. When you're sitting there and taking it easy and stuff like that. We all know we work very hard and none of us get paid fairly for the job that we do. So, knowing that, it is stressful. You did something you did not want to do, concerned about personal appearance. When you're running calls and you're doing things and you're up in the middle of the night, some people very stressed over getting up in the middle of the night and their hair's messed up and get up in the middle of the night and they just don't look appropriate because they're so filthy. It stresses them. You had your sleep disturbed and hurried to meet a deadline. You got to be up first thing in the morning because you got somewhere to be with your family, but all night working EMS, you pretty much hang it up. You're not going to get to sleep, and you're tired. Concern about personal appearance, interrupted during daily task activity, difficulties in dealing with traffic, relaxing because of money problems. That's the thing. Worried about another problem and unable to complete a task. Unable to complete a task interrupted while talking. Waiting longer than you wanted to, and now you're worried about another problem. Experiencing illnesses and physical discomfort, unable to complete all your plans for the day. How many of us have got to work and just been so stressed out, and our stomachs are so tore up, or we just didn't feel like we had a cold or a bug, and you really just didn't feel like doing it? These things do cause physical illness and disease, and it does eventually affect you. Stress is a huge problem in our job, and for a lot of us, we've never, ever, ever dealt with it. Now, some things can help us with stress is EMS wellness, nutrition, alter any bad habits. Guys, caffeine, nicotine, cut them out. They're bad. They tear your body up. I used to drink Jolt Cola and a lot of heavy caffeinated beverages to keep up all the time so I could stay up all night. Now I'm in my 40s and I'm dealing with AFib because of it. You've got to really focus on taking care of yourself because right now, just to get you through your shift or get you through the stress of days, you don't want it to ruin the rest of your life. And taking care of yourself and what you eat is very important now. Changes behavior, you got to have commitment, self-discipline, understanding, change the process, and patience. While you're trying to deal with illness, wellness, make sure you set realistic goals. If it's, I'm going to walk 3 miles this week, maybe that's realistic. But if I say, I'm going to walk 3 miles every day for the next 10 days, that might not be realistic. Do you really think you're going to be able to walk 3 miles while you're working? Not going to happen. So, setting realistic goals is very important. Good nutrition is fundamental of well-being. Eating good, less greasy foods, more healthy foods, eating your four food groups, making sure you don't overeat particular ones. If you have a bread habit and a bread problem, put the bread down. If it's something you're battling and you can get away from it, physically remove yourself from it. If you go to a Mexican restaurant and you always able to eat and you feel bloated and sick and when you run a call after it, don't eat a Mexican restaurant when you're working. These are some of the things you can work on would really help you out.